A new Netflix series revives the story of an infamous serial killer. Hi everyone, I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, lesson number 523 for Thursday, November 24th, 2022. Happy Thanksgiving in the US. JR is the producer, and he has uploaded this full lesson to plainenglish.com/523. Coming up today, the world of streaming video is increasingly competitive. For big streamers, it's not enough to have a deep library of good shows and movies. To hold on to customers, they have to continuously release big hits. And this fall, Netflix had a big hit. It's called Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. With little promotion, it rocketed to the top of Netflix's streaming library in the US and around the world. But the series has also attracted its share of criticism as well. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you what it means to take liberties with the truth. And we'll have a song of the week too. Now, just a quick note before we get started. This is a grim story. The details are public. They've been public for decades. But if you want to go in fresh, this lesson will have some spoilers. And second, this lesson contains some graphic descriptions of a serial killer. If that makes you uncomfortable, you might want to pick another lesson from the archives for today. Before this fall, if you said the name Jeffrey Dahmer, to most Americans, they would know a few things. Serial killer, they would know that. Cannibal, they would know that. Possibly they would know he was murdered in jail. But for those of us who didn't live through the story, the other details were a little murky. I was about 10 years old when his crimes were revealed, too young to really follow the story. And although the Dahmer case was extensively publicized, and there have been books and documentaries, there were a lot of key details that I didn't know. For example, I didn't know that the murders took place in Milwaukee. I didn't know he targeted gay and bisexual men for romantic encounters. I didn't know he performed sexual acts on the bodies of his victims. I didn't know he primarily targeted minority men. And I certainly didn't know that police in Milwaukee turned a blind eye to the story of perhaps America's most famous serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer. He grew up in the American Midwest, was a bit of a loner, an outsider in school. He had some weird habits, including dissecting roadkill. He drank a lot, was fired from multiple jobs, and was even discharged from the army for alcohol abuse. He did not go to college, but bounced around from job to job. He was twice convicted of sexually related offenses, once for exposing himself and once for sexual assault. From age 19 until he was caught at age 31, Dahmer killed 17 men and boys. Each time was a little different, but his killings followed a theme. He would approach a victim that he found attractive, often in Milwaukee's gay bars. He would invite the victim to his home, to a hotel, or to a bathhouse. He would drug the victims, perform sex acts on them, and often kill them. He sometimes disposed of their skeletons and organs in large vats of acid. He admitted to eating their flesh and organs. He was a cannibal. He preserved body parts, like skulls, as souvenirs. The story shows that neighbors repeatedly called the police, complaining about the smell, screaming, and other loud noises coming from Dahmer's apartment. He also had a few close calls in his own family home. Police often refused to get involved. They ignored warning signs, dismissing them because they were from minority communities. In one particularly distressing story, a 14-year-old boy escaped from Dahmer's apartment and asked neighbors for help. He had been drugged and abused by Dahmer earlier that evening. When police arrived, Dahmer convinced the police that the boy was actually 19, not 14, and that the two were romantically involved. Police accompanied the teen and Dahmer back to Dahmer's apartment and considered the matter a domestic dispute. At the time they returned the 14-year-old, the corpse of another body was still in Dahmer's apartment, decomposing. The 14-year-old became Dahmer's next victim that same night. The series is grim. The episodes take time to tell the stories of the victims, to shed some light on the minority gay community in a small Midwestern city in the days before gay marriage and before general acceptance of homosexuality. But it is important to remember that Monster is entertainment, not a documentary. The series draws on public records, police and court records, Dahmer's own lengthy statements to police, extensive reporting, his father's memoirs, among others. But it also takes some liberties for the sake of the story. The liberties are forgivable, but they are liberties nonetheless. They take two forms. First, the series tries too hard to explain how Dahmer became who he was. Dahmer's father did not encourage his interest in dissecting roadkill as a teenager, as the story suggests. His mother was portrayed as highly unstable. In the series, she was drug addicted and crazy. Real life may have been more mundane. She may have suffered from depression. She died years ago and did not leave a memoir, so we won't know her side of the story. In these ways, the series bends the truth to try to explain Dahmer's behavior, something that is probably unexplainable. Second, the series exaggerates both good and evil. And again, keep in mind, this is entertainment. The police officers who ignored the 14-year-old did not receive a union award for Officers of the Year, as the series portrays. Dahmer's neighbor, Glenda Cleveland, did not live next door to Dahmer. Her character in the series is a composite of several characters. She did act courageously, but many other neighbors and relatives also helped. Their names were not in the series. Still, the series is remarkably true to the truth, in part because there was so much information to draw on. Evan Peters plays an uncanny Jeffrey Dahmer. His appearance, mannerisms, gait, and manner of speaking are all spot on. But the series has also attracted a fair amount of criticism, and that criticism illustrates the delicate balance of the true crime genre. And that's what we'll talk about on Monday. As I was writing this lesson, Netflix announced that it had signed up the producers of this series to create 2 more. Not 2 more seasons about Jeffrey Dahmer, but about other serial killers who have had an impact on society. The producer is Ryan Murphy. He's behind the popular series American Horror Story. He also produced the Netflix series The Watchers, also based on a true story. Netflix signed him up for another season of that one, too. Today's English expression is to take liberties. Now, this is an expression that's extremely specific. You'll rarely use it, but it's a good one to know. The expression is to take liberties with the truth. And what it means is this: you change the truth a little so that you can tell a good story. You change the truth. You make small adjustments so that your story is a little better. When a storyteller takes liberties with the truth, the storyteller is generally faithful to the essence of the story, but changes some details to make the story better. Here's a great example. Barack Obama's step-grandfather died while hanging drapes, according to his biographer and Washington Post reporter David Moranis. But this might come as a surprise to you if you've read Barack Obama's own memoir, Dreams from My Father. In that book, the former president says that this same step-grandfather died fighting Dutch troops in Indonesia. He did fight Dutch troops in Indonesia, but he died hanging drapes. Obama took liberties with his true family history to make the story better. If you ever have to give a speech at a wedding, you have my permission to take some liberties with the truth. This is a time to say only good things about the couple getting married. Maybe you know about that time they had a trial separation, or the huge fight about the ex-boyfriend, or when one of them was caught. It doesn't matter. Leave that out of your speech at their wedding. You have my permission to take some liberties with the truth. This is a time to tell a good story. You can change the details or selectively leave some details out to make the story better. And so it is with movies that are based on a true story. Now, from what I've read, the new Netflix series about Jeffrey Dahmer stays faithful to the truth. The producers had access to a lot of real film, a lot of evidence, books, police reports, victim statements, and more. But even so, they took some liberties to make the story better. I told you about a few of them earlier, but here's one example. Glenda Cleveland was a neighbor who alerted police and tried to call attention to Dahmer's misbehavior. In the series, she lives next door and smells bodies decomposing, and she hears screaming from the apartment. The real-life Glenda Cleveland did try courageously to stop Jeffrey Dahmer, but she lived in a different building. The producers of Monster made Glenda Cleveland a more interesting character by taking some liberties with the truth here. They could have stayed a little closer to the truth by introducing other characters who lived on the same floor and reducing the role of Glenda Cleveland's character. But that might have confused viewers, and it wouldn't have been as good a story. So the producers took some liberties with the truth. They changed the truth to make the story better, but they were still faithful to the essence of the story. Now it's time for JR's Song of the Week. It's called Alone, Part 2, by the British-Norwegian DJ Alan Walker and the American singer Ava Max. Here's the line I like best. All the cool kids did their own thing. I was on the outside looking in. The video was shot in Vietnam. So thanks for that Song of the Week, JR. Alone, Part 2 by Alan Walker and Ava Max. And that brings us to the end of this Plain English lesson number 523. Next time, we'll talk about the criticism of the Dahmer series and the perils of true crime. Don't worry, I'll go light on the details in the next lesson. Remember, you can get this full lesson at plainenglish.com/523. That includes our full exercises page with fill-in-the-blank exercises, a voice recorder to help you with your pronunciation, a lesson quiz, and more. plainenglish.com/523. And if you're a Plain English Plus member, you get access to those special lesson exercises. Well, that's all for today. See you on Monday.